name's Matt. I'm with the Geek Awakens. We are here with KM's Szpara.
Szpara.
Sorry, my apologies.
Okay.
we're epic at butchering names. We make a habit of that. So.
Solid.
We wanted to take some time, ask you a couple of questions. We know you got a book coming out this week, but I kind of want to start with something you've done in the past. You edited an annual collection of the best transgender sci-fi stories. It's called Transcendent. I'm just curious. I mean, I know that that's different than writing. So how was that editorial process different than working on your novel?
Well, I didn't have to write anything. as you mentioned, that was wow. I think the stories were from 2015.
Okay.
So it was put together and put out by 2016, I believe. And that feels like the 90s at this point, right? Because it feels like forever ago. So that was actually my first time editing anything. And it wasn't hugely hands-on in an editorial capacity like people think an editor does at their desk. But an editor has other jobs which are sort of like project management, and so it was mostly pardon me, it was mostly project management, but it was also the selection process. Okay. You get the submissions and sort of trying to put together something that feels whole, but is comprised of a lot of different parts. That was very fun. I did a lot of sort of writing down titles and aspects of the stories on note cards and laying them out on my floor and making sure that like things fit together, just like sort of the chapters of a book.
Right.
Like you still want a book to have sort of not necessarily an arc,
but an identity,
like a wave. Yeah, like something that carries you through it.
Yeah.
So
awesome. Now, in today's society, the own voices section of writers is becoming more and more populated. It's more and more critical. Are you excited being part of that group?
So Own Voices, I feel like is sort of hitting a moment where it's both great and causing problems for the same people it's supposed to support.
Okay.
We see people who are able to sort of authentically tell their stories and identify that, and it's easy for readers to identify with the tag, but it's also putting people in a position where they feel like they have to out themselves on various levels, and we've seen very recently, like especially a number of women authors this year have like felt that they needed to come out about very deep topics like abuse, and being queer and different things in their life, and no one should ever have to do that. But, at the same time, as a trans author, the thing about being queer is that it's not something you can see, right? So someone could be trans and writing their authentic experience, and they don't want to be out, and they don't owe me being out, but then I also don't know whether I can trust the person's story if you've been hurt so many times before. Does that make sense?
It does.
So I am out and open when I publish because I feel safe enough. Never truly totally safe, but I know that I have communities that support me, and so it's a decision that I've made. Like when I go on panels and do interviews, and when I talk about my books and my work, I come out because I want to, sort of be a pillar of strength for other people that want to do that. So I'm very excited to be able to do that aspect of it. Awesome. I also feel nervous and protective for the people who are sort of forced through the bad experiences as part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Docile arrives
Tuesday
this week.
Excited volume.
I mean, that kind of leads into the question because it's your debut novel.
Yes.
And I remember yesterday in the Tor panel, you were talking about, what you'd written previously and what hadn't been published. So this is the debut novel.
Sure is.
Are you excited? Are you nervous? What kind of feelings do you have about that?
I am excited and nervous. You nailed it. I mean, I've had works published before, right? So, but not novels. I have had several short stories, not a ton. I'm not a prolific short fiction writer, but when the mood strikes me, I go forth. And I did have a novelette, Small Changes Over Long Periods of Time, which is about a gay trans man who is bitten by a vampire. and then his body changes differently than a cis person's. It sort of plays on the tropes of like how, vampires like get that you're a human, you get bit by a vampire, and then they're like, I'm a hot version of me now. Like, what does that look like, right? And how does your body decide like what's hot, like based on like if you've like medically altered your body, for example. And that novelette was nominated for a Hugo and a Nebula, and which is incredible, and I'm honored. But when that happens, thousands and thousands of people who are not your intended audience pick up your work. It's just like sent to their inboxes for awards consideration, which means like a lot of people with like hot takes that maybe like aren't qualified to have them by virtue of like not being trans or not being queer, like want to have opinions. Or there's also sort of like the like within progressive spaces, there is sort of this like purity test thing going on now where like all your characters are supposed to make all the right decisions and be good people and mine are not. So I've been through that experience before where like you've been sort of thrust into thousands of people having hot takes about your work, and some of those are very hard to deal with. It's hurtful. I'm a big fan of the mute and block buttons because that stuff is for readers, and like it's difficult though being an artist, and because you write stories because you want to engage with people, because you want people to hear your stories and you want them to like have conversations about them, but you cannot participate in the same way that like the sort of platonic ideal is. So I look forward to sort of like everyone else getting to enjoy all the things that I wish that I could enjoy when my debut comes out, and I'm just sort of like riding whatever highs I can get. And buy my book. I want it to do well.
So speaking of Docile, can you tell us just a little bit about the book, what it's about?
I like should have this like spiel memorized by now because I've been asked so many times that I'm always like, oh God, what's my book about?
You can't just recite the blurb?
I can't just recite the blurb. It is it's a near alt future where debt doesn't die with you. It continues down through the generations. So there are the trillionaire class is sort of like blown out of proportion, okay. And then most other people are debtors. And in this world, because capitalism is terrible, you can sell your debt to a private citizen to pay it off instead of like, nowadays, if you have student loans, they're offloaded to companies all the time. Without your consent, right? So in my world, it's private citizens who are very wealthy think they're helping, the debtors by paying off their debts. Okay. And what happens is that debtors are offered a drug called Docile, and the drug makes you sort of forget what's happening to you and also more eager to serve. And so companies and private people are paying off debtors' debts. How many times can I say that word in this interview? And it's like the temptation to take this drug is very strong. So my protagonist, Elijah Wilder, he refuses to take the drug, which had ill effects on his mother when she was on it. And unfortunately, his debt is bought by Dr. Alexander Bishop III, whose family invents and works on this drug. And so when Elijah refuses it, it throws Alex's world and worldview for just a huge wrench in the system. And also Elijah gets to sort of see what this world is like sober, so to say, unlike so many other people. And from there's just so many butts and feelings, and I like to call the second half of the book "Welcome to Trauma Town." So I'm laughing about it. It's very serious, but also we can't just all die all the time. So
no, well, I picked it up yesterday. You were nice enough to sign it after your panel yesterday, so I'm super excited.
That was my first batch of signings.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
Super excited to get home and get started on that.
Cheers.
Just one last thing before we wrap up here. If people, our followers, want to follow you on social media, how can they get a hold of you or find you?
Yes. So I have a website. That's my real official thing. It is kmspara.com. My last name is spelled Szpara. There's a guide on how to pronounce it on my website. And on Twitter and Instagram, I have the same handles at KMSpara. And I just want to say on Instagram, I just post stories like all the time. And I love GIFs so much and filters. And please come have fun with me.
I say over the last couple of days, I have started following you on Twitter. So I'm watching the stories and I noticed your stay at the hotel and the party that was going on.
Yeah, my hotel last night, which was like a couple miles north, I walked in and there was like a Playboy was having like 60th anniversary party and there were like bunny ears all over. And yeah, that was wild.
Not quite what you expected.
Yeah, and if you want to like learn all my hot takes on like Chicago winters, that's Twitter.
All right.
I did not wear a coat today.
You heard it here first. Well, thank you very much for your
time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Cheers.